Hey, hello. If you've followed the content on this channel for quite some time now, I'm very positive you've heard the phrase, Egypt is no longer Egyptians. So, if Egypt is no longer Egyptians, who are the real Egyptians and how do they look like? Today, if you search Cleopatra on Google, you'll be welcomed by images of white women and busts of white women as well. If you are lucky, you'll find one dark-skinned woman who keeps popping up. That is because of a newly launched Netflix TV series that has had everyone talking recently, named Cleopatra, and so definitely had to be on the top of the search result. So, here's the thing. Just recently, the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism were outraged by Netflix for portraying Cleopatra as a dark-skinned woman, saying they were blackwashing Egyptian history, declaring that Cleopatra was light-skinned. This is not the first time we've had the denial of existence of black Egyptians. Remember, most Egyptians who live in Egypt now maintain that Egypt has its own identity, distinct from the rest of Africa's. So, what happens to the native black Egyptians and where are they now? First, a short explanation of Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. Then we hear from a black person who was born in Egypt and naturalized in the United States.
Hey, call me Louis. This is my spot. LuiSpot.
Now, Egyptians made a journey across the Atlantic. How did they do that? Why did they do that? How do we know that they do it? They did it. Listen carefully. Do not confuse modern Egypt with ancient Egypt. These are two totally different worlds. Here we are in America, and it would be very difficult to find an American in this room. We call ourselves Americans because we are in America, we are American citizens. But there are African people here, European people perhaps, Asian people, but no Americans. I am part American, I am part Makusi Indian and part African, but it would be difficult to find an American audience that is pure American. That's why Egypt, do you go to Egypt and you said the Arab is not an Egyptian? The people who built the pyramids were not Arabs. I know, man, because I am responsible for returning to the bloody Arabs the splinters of the Sphinx's nose and chin, and the Arabs do not want to remake it because it looks Negro. But we can go into the graves. We can go into the graves and we find the hard evidence. The skeletal evidence is overwhelming. But you see, Egypt was so rich. The Africans were so extraordinary. And they were not superior people. You don't have inferior and superior people. This is what makes you superior and inferior. A certain vision of the world. A certain vision of yourself. Many of us have been destroyed, reduced, because we've been made to accept other people's vision of us. So bear in mind, here I am responsible. I financed a telephone link-up between Gamal Abdel Mokhtar, the Arab delegate at UNESCO, Sheikh Anthony Diop, the African delegate at UNESCO, myself, the representative of the British Museum, Garland Roberts, who found the pieces, and another gentleman who did translations from the French and British began. No, Van Sertima, we can't do that. Because if we start returning this item and that item to this and that museum, we'll have no museum. I said, sorry, we're not asking you to return everything from your museums. We're well aware of the things that have been taken from other museums and other places. This is a very specific thing. It is of no value to you. You can't show it. What is the point? You can't show the splinters of the nose. Nobody's interested in splinters. Put the nose back on. But the Arabs do. The Mokhtar, the Arab delegate, never said a bloody word. Boy, he don't want no nose interfering with the tourist trade in Egypt. It's as crude as that. Look why Egypt is no longer Egyptian. Those are not the people who built the pyramids. The Syrians attacked in 654 BC. The Persians attacked in 550 BC. The Greeks attacked in 320 BC. The Romans attacked just before and after Christ. The Arabs attacked 638 to 640 AD. That is why Egypt is no longer Egyptian. They have nothing to do with the building of the pyramids. If you go back in the graves, we have found hard evidence in the graves that the Egyptians were African. Let me listen to the anthropologists, all the great anthropologists. Because this is hidden, this doesn't come out in history books.
I am a black Egyptian. My father is much darker than I am. My mother is lighter than I am. In Egypt, people are identified by the religion first, not the race. So in Egypt, if you are Christian, you are a minority person. But if you're black, you're not a minority person. You are a part of the mainstream society. And I came from this background. And in Egypt, you identify as Arab and as Muslim. And in this country, when I first came, I identified myself as Arab American and Muslim first. And gradually, I became to identify myself as black. I came to the US in 1978, and I became US citizen in 1985. When I became a US resident, I was told by the Immigration and Naturalization that I am white. And I told them that I'm black, and they said, no, in this country, you are white. All Arabs in this country, all Arab immigrants are white. I didn't pay much attention in the beginning to this, because in the Arab world, we identify with our ethnicity first as Arabs, and then with the race second as black or white or whatever. But in this country, you identify with your racial group first and then with your ethnicity second. Gradually, I became black first and Arab second. And I rejected my white classification publicly for the first time in 1987, in February, as a panelist in a function sponsored by the Association of the Study of Black Life and History in Detroit. I said that I belong to two minority groups. I am Arab American and Black American, and I'm racially black and ethnically Egyptian. I was harassed by my employer right after that. I work for a white school district. The superintendent is white, all the associate superintendents are white, even though that we provide services to 30% black population. But the organization is white and the approach is very white. The attitude towards me changed completely after I went out publicly and rejected my white classification. One coworker came to me and told me, a white coworker came to me and told me right after the function that he met with the superintendent, and if I don't keep my mouth shut, my educational career is over. He said, you have nothing to do with these people, you have a history and a culture. These people came from the jungle, you have nothing to do with them. These people lie and steal. When I see one of them in my neighborhood, I call the police. And I was told by the director of general education, who is retired now, in '88, I was told by him that I get people angry when I say that I'm black Egyptian. If I just say that I'm Egyptian, I would get along. I have to add that I was denied promotion twice because I chose black classification. This is part of my 2 lawsuits against my employer, which are currently pending, 2 lawsuits. We don't have Egyptians of European descent in Egypt. We have a population which is basically a mixture of ancient Egyptian blacks who intermarried with Arabs right after the Arab conquest. The ancient Egyptian population was brown and black before the Arab conquest. But before the Arab conquest came the Greeks. The ancient Egyptian population was in Egypt for thousands of years. The ancient Egyptian population was brown and black. And the Greeks came in 300 BC, and they started to intermarry with the local population. And then the Romans came and ruled from 70 BC until they were conquered by the Arabs and kicked out by the Arabs in the 7th century. And these people intermarried with the Egyptian Copts, and they made the pigmentation of the Egyptians, the Copts, much lighter because of this intermarriage with Europeans. This is a big problem because Egypt, the ancient Egyptian civilization was a black civilization, and ancient Egyptians were black according to the Greek scholars and the Roman scholars. Ancient Egypt became white only in the 19th century and in the 20th century. And the scholar who is responsible for this is Seligman, the noted anthropologist from England, Seligman. White supremacy argues that blacks are inferior than white intellectually. They are subhuman and they are incapable of building a civilization. White supremacy had one dilemma until Seligman came. The dilemma was ancient Egypt was black according to the Greek and the Roman scholars. 10 of them said that, including Aristotle and Plato. 10 of them said that in writing. They had this dilemma. Ancient Egyptian was black. So if blacks are inferior intellectually and are incapable of building a civilization, how come the ancient Egyptians built a civilization? Seligman found the solution for this dilemma. He came up with a theory called the Hamite theory. He separated the blacks who built a civilization in Egypt and Ethiopia from the rest of the black race, and he called them brown-skinned whites, or the Hamites. So Seligman saved white supremacy from this dilemma, and all the white scholars followed him from that time on. This was at the end of the 19th century. And since that time, white scholarship says that ancient Egypt is white. I want to carry my case all the way up to the US Supreme Court if necessary.
So, what do you all think about the race of real Egyptians? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Otherwise, give it a thumbs up if you liked it, comment if you have any other thing to say, and share. Also, make sure to subscribe to this channel if you are new and want more videos like this. Until next time, peace out.